The dismissive avoidant doesn't want you. They want the fantasy of you. They crave a partner that feels perfect, but not one that feels real. You see, the fantasy you doesn't have any needs. The fantasy you never challenges them. The fantasy you never gets upset with them. The fantasy you never has any conflict or expectations. The fantasy you never wants anything from them. The fantasy you keeps it light and surface level all the time and never expresses deep emotions and never pushes for higher level commitment. This fantasy you is the fantasy they chase of this perfect relationship, the one that doesn't trigger their attachment wounds. The dismissive avoidant wants the fantasy of love because the fantasy of love feels safe, but the actuality of love feels deeply triggering to them. So every time a relationship gets real, it bursts that fantasy. But rather than saying, this fantasy perhaps doesn't exist, they say, well, this just isn't the right person, and they go try to pursue the fantasy with someone else. This fantasy of this perfect relationship, this easy relationship, is the only type that doesn't trigger their attachment wounds. They have very specific wounds around intimacy, emotions, vulnerability, conflict resolution, communication, expectations, any kind of normal relationship behaviors trigger them because they were severely emotionally neglected in childhood. Love was not safe for them. There was no healthy love given. When they need nurturing, they got coldness. Their emotions were dismissed. So they learned to stuff it down, suppress those emotions, which is a maladaptive coping mechanism. And they learned that if they do express themselves, they get rejected. They develop this wound of shame and defectiveness. And that's why closeness feels unsafe, because if they get too close and vulnerable, they feel that they're going to be exposed as defective and get rejected. So they craft this perfect partner fantasy around those wounds because this perfect partner would never trigger those wounds. It's light, it's surface level all the time. They never have to show up for their partner if they don't want to. Their partner has no needs, no emotions, no deep expectations, no conflict, nothing. They're always on the same page. It doesn't exist in the real world. But they hold on to this fantasy, believing that when eventually they find the right person, everything will magically fall into place. And when their partner turns out to be a real person with real feelings and needs, they just go continue to chase the fantasy with someone else. And that fantasy of the perfect partner also helps keep one foot out the door in every relationship they get into, because if there's someone better out there, they don't have to go all in with someone that actually triggers them.